Well, it is officially a week since the election, and we are just getting but small peeks and insights into what the Trump regime has in store for the rest of us. I've been spending the day trying to rack my brain in thinking about what can I provide? What guidance, what understanding can I provide in this moment that for many is filled with deep panic? So, we're going to unpack how we move forward with the 68 days. That's right, you heard me. 68 days that we have until Inauguration Day, when, as Stephen Miller said, we get to work. So, friends, let us prepare. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show. Well, here we are. Here we are. We have 68 days until Inauguration Day. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not spending those 68 days finger pointing. I'm not spending those 68 days trying to frame the fight as many in the Democratic Party are doing. Instead, what I plan on doing on this show and on all of my platforms is trying to offer advice for people on how to prepare, because that's the place that we're in. The place for panic was a year ago. The place for panic was back over the summer when we had a change at the top of the ticket. The time to panic was the first time around for the Trump regime. But we no longer have time to panic. We no longer, honestly, have time to be laying on our couches or laying in bed and saying, woe is me. It's time to get actionable in a lot of ways. And I say that knowing, again, that a lot of people are not going to be able to do this. The things that I'm going to offer up today, the things that I've offered up on Twitter earlier today, which, by the way, I will be leaving the platform, but I wanted to do the best that I can with the limited amount of time that we have in order to, wake people up to the reality that I know is very difficult for folks to wrap their minds around. But this is where we are. Over the last week, Donald Trump and his regime have begun to post videos, do interviews, and say exactly what it is that they plan to do. The Department of Education, target number 1.
Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
So, according to this administration, what does real education look like? Well, you don't have to look any further than the state of Florida to get an idea and a feel for what real education means. Real education means getting rid of, eliminating gender studies, eliminating Black studies, eliminating LGBTQ studies, eliminating women's studies on top of gender expansive studies. It means what Ron DeSantis had said back a year ago. We're going back to the quote unquote fundamentals. We're going to be teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, we're also not living in the Industrial Revolution where we only want cogs in a machine, where we only want factory or assembly line workers. But that is exactly what this new ideology, this new stance on public education will be. Donald Trump has also said that he is going to gut the Department of Education. Well, people will say, well, states are mostly funded, right? It's state funding that goes into education. Well, when it comes to special education, right, for students with disabilities, when it comes to ESL, English as a second language, when it comes to a lot of things, guess what? The Department of Education comes in handy with those funds. By Donald Trump and this regime eliminating the Department of Education, eliminating public education altogether and privatizing it, what he is doing is creating a permanent underclass, a permanent working class, because we know that those that can afford to send their children to private school will absolutely do that. Well, I'll tell you where I sit in New York, private schools can run you $50,000, $60,000 a year. Private school, K through 12 education, friends. Tell me who has the ability to pay $60,000 a year for 12 years on top of whatever the hell college is going to cost by the time your child gets there. No one does, except for the top 1%. That video that I just showed you was about higher education, because higher education requires accreditation. Accredited universities, right, are those universities that you will get your degrees from and that then you will use on your resumes to go and get jobs. Well, guess who has the power to accredit or not? The federal government. So, what Donald Trump is saying is that any mention of diversity, equity, and inclusion, any measures that you may put into place in order to create some type of equity in enrollment so that your entire student body doesn't look like a 1950s class of just white men and white women, they will come after you. And you will say the response will be, well, those schools, they have endowments of hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars. What Donald Trump offered in that message was saying that I will sue you for the entirety of your endowment, which is to bankrupt that institution. Do you know who else receives a lot of federal funding? Historically Black colleges and universities. They receive federal funding. If you remember, Joe Biden recently said that he was going to be providing $16 billion in funds to HBCUs. If HBCUs do not receive federal funds, they go the way of the wind. This is an all-out assault on our education, but also our economy. Because if you don't create the knowledge base of workers to be the innovators, the change makers, the engineers, the nurses, the doctors, the lawyers, the business, the urban planners, if you're not educating people for this current century that we are living in, then what exactly do they have to offer the Fortune 5 companies and other institutions? They don't. Somebody just put in the chat and said, well, international students are no longer going to come here. Well, guess what? This regime does not want them here. These are international students that would largely come to the United States for our higher education programs and then stay. Not only are they not going to come, dear friends, but the fact is that people who are able to go to university are going to begin to look abroad for their education, because what is it going to be worth? I don't understand, to be honest. I guess that the outcome that they are looking for here is to turn America into essentially a sweatshop nation, right? Low education, low ability to be able to access any other type of economic viability, economic mobility. And all we're going to be able to provide the world are low-level, unskilled labor. The very labor that they're looking to actually kick out of the country, those that work on farms and factories, undocumented people who have very much been a backbone of our economic system. They're the ones that operate in the shadows, that are taking care of people's kids as their nannies and their caregivers. So I guess that the goal here is you kick those people out, you kick out their entire families, and then you don't have education is no longer seen as an opportunity for advancement, except to advance into a role on an assembly line, and I guess problem fixed. But the goal is to make sure that no one other than straight white men have economic viability and advancement in this country, which are the exact people that Donald Trump is fighting for and feels like they are aggrieved. So this is where we are, right? Like this is 100% where we are. And folks, all over social media are talking about, we can't give up resistance. And I got to tell you, as somebody that has been working as an educator, trying to educate the public on their power, on how government works, I'm going to be very real with you all for as long as it is safe and legal for me to do so. There isn't a game here in which we are able to win outside of revolution. And I'm being 100% real. People all over the internet are talking about, oh, don't worry, we'll get them in midterms. With what rules? They are going to undo everything. You're talking about gerrymandering till the cows come home. You're talking about voter suppression. You're talking about just essentially taking whole rolls of voters, throwing them in the trash. You're talking about changing the way in which we're actually able to vote and who is able to vote. They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, and they have the Supreme Court, friends. So when I said yesterday that people need to actually start being really honest with themselves about what the future looks like here, I've been told that I am hyperbolic, right? That I exaggerate, that I'm dramatic. I haven't been proven wrong yet. And, some would say that, well, Danielle, you're like a huge Debbie Downer. I just don't want people to be caught off guard. I do want people to be prepared as much as you can possibly be prepared for what is coming. But I know that there are folks that are just like, well, I'm here illegally. What does that mean? When you're talking about Stephen Miller who is now going to be the deputy chief of staff, who is running the denaturalization program. Naturalized citizens go through the tests and the procedures to become citizens of these United States. Well, this regime believes that too many people have been naturalized. Oh, well, Danielle, they're not allowed to do that. What do you mean by allowed? Everything is about legality. And when you own the Supreme Court, what are you talking about? We're going to sue. Sue and go where? Sue and start out at the lower courts, which may have some favorable judges that actually still believe in the rule of law. But I'm telling you, the rule of law actually means shit. So, the question is a great one. Who is going to stop them? No one is going to stop them. And that's why I have been talking about these next 68 days and what people can do to try their best to protect themselves, protect their families, protect your finances, protect your health moving forward. I don't want this show for the next several weeks to be a bitch session. I want it to be proactive and action oriented about what people need to do in order to prepare themselves. Because this is what folks are already doing. MSNBC's ratings have plummeted, as has CNN. MSNBC has lost 50% of its viewership over the last week. CNN has lost nearly 30% of its viewership over the last week. Do you know whose viewership has increased? Fox. I think partly because people want to understand what to expect, and they think that this is an opportunity for you to kind of have a window in to what the other side is thinking. But the fact is that people are tuning this shit out. A lot of folks are here, so grateful to be supporting independent media, particularly at this time when we all don't know how long a free press is actually going to be a thing. Now, people will say, well, Danielle, that's in the Constitution, and you would need a constitutional convention in order to undo, right, one of our key amendments. You're absolutely correct in that. But you can make it damn near impossible for people to be able to do their jobs by making things illegal one swipe of a pen at a time. You can label different networks and individuals as enemies of the state. And then when you do that, you're able to do whatever you want. Because you're no longer, once you've labeled somebody as an enemy of the state or an institution as an enemy of the state or as a terrorist organization, and who is inferring those laws? The very people who have said for the last 9 years that the press is the enemy of the people. So I offer this because I think that it is incredibly important for people to get a hold on what it is that folks have in store. And people have said on social media, I've watched them be like, oh, it'll take at least a year. It'll take a Project 2025 is an over 900-page plan. That was the public plan. They also had another plan of operation. And that, dear friends, that was for when they actually won. A step-by-step plan of operationalizing. So you have to understand that this is not like, oh, this is not the Trump regime that we saw in 2016. That we were like laughing at. He was firing a ton of people. It was a revolving door, what have you. These folks are ready on day one, which means that, again, 68 days to prepare. So here's another thing. I love Allie, right? Allie is part of Mary Trump Media and said, not one, predictions for 2028. Not one person who started in a role in Trump's administration will end in it. Trump's presidency will end in total disgrace. Anyone associated with the administration will be politically ruined. And my quote tweet was, Trump's presidency will not end in 4 years. This idea that things are just going to be cyclical and move and operate in the same way that they have in the past, that is a fallacy. And I think that that is a dream that people are holding on to because it gives them a little bit of peace in the midst of this chaos. And what I say is that you need to strengthen your roots so that you're able to weather the storm, because the storm is coming, whether or not we'd like to imagine that it's going to go away in 4 years, which I'm telling you, it is not. So what should folks be doing? Here are some recommendations that I have, recommendations of things that I am taking into consideration right now. And yes, Roxanne, you're right. It is dark, but I'm not here to bullshit people. I really am not. I don't want to bullshit you. I don't want to tell folks that we're going to go get them next time. I don't. I spent the last 9 years prepping people for the alternative, understanding what was at stake. And now we're here. We've arrived at what is at stake. So it is incredibly important for us not to pretend and rather prepare for the worst. And then if the worst doesn't happen, fan-fucking-tastic. But if it does, then at least you've given yourself and your family and your community maybe a little bit of a head start. Maybe. That's what I want to be able to do. So here is what I posted today. And since it has gone viral, and I am very concerned about going viral these days because I don't know who's paying attention. But this is what I posted. Take it for what you will. Here is the reality. Everything that you thought would be worst case scenario, double it. There is truly no real bracing for what this full-on assault will bring, but key things. 1, try your best to protect your money as a recession, if not a deep depression, is coming. All you need to understand is that every time a Republican takes office, there is a recession. Why is that? Because the initial act that they do is to pay back their biggest donors with the tax breaks that they promised them for funneling in tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into their campaign. So they need to turn around, particularly in 2025 when those tax breaks expire, that will be extended indefinitely for the top 1%, which means then that the tax increases are going to come for people who make less, right? That are now going to have to pay more. And you're going to say to yourself, well, what the fuck are we paying for? Because guess what? They're going to take away Medicaid. They're going to gut Social Security, right? All of the public goods, the agencies that we pay into, well, those are no longer going to be in existence, but you're still going to have to pay, because how else is the king going to be able to eat? So I say to people, protect what money you can. Your 401ks, your IRAs, your savings. Talk to a financial advisor. I am not a financial advisor, but I will tell you to speak to some people that know what is and can make sense of it for you and tell you the ways in which you can seek some type of protection. I would also add an addendum to this that in your homes, maybe have, or in your lives, cash on hand, emergency, cash on hand, important things. Okay. Next up, number 2, if you're using ACA, the Affordable Care Act, right, as you're in the marketplace and this is how you have received your health care, I suggest that you book all of your health appointments now before January 20th. They have made no qualms that they do not care if they have something in place to replace the ACA, because at this point, folks, they don't really give a fuck. So if you have insurance like I do, because I am a solo entrepreneur, right? Self-employed, and this is the way that I receive my health care, I suggest that you make your health appointments right now while you're watching this with me. Make sure that your vaccines are up to date, right? Make sure that the tests, your routine tests, are up to date, because their first, second, third, and fourth act is to repeal the ACA. Number 3, if you're a woman or a person with a uterus of childbearing age, I suggest you stock up on all of the birth control and Plan B that is available to you. I suggest that you ask your doctors for, 3 months, 6 months, a year supply, because they also want to institute a law, and I believe it's already on the books, but it's something that is so antiquated that would have it be a crime for you to receive your birth control or Plan B, mifepristone, or any of those things in the mail, right? That is going to be considered a federal offense. So again, 68 days. I suggest that you stock up on these things if you use them, so that you have them available in the thank you, Caroline. The Comstock Act. I couldn't remember the name of it. Thank you so much. This is what they want to reinstitute, right? Which makes, again, transporting goods, certain products through the mail, illegal. Number 4, if you are living in a mixed status household, contact an immigration lawyer. What do I mean by mixed status? And I would say somebody just asked about number 3 in terms of condoms too. Yeah, why the fuck not? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you have no idea, right? We're dealing with a Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who him and his son monitor each other's porn intake. These are people that are operating in the most puritanical forms of Christianity. And that is who is in charge of literally everything. So yes, I would include condoms in that as well. Now, number 4, mixed status, meaning that you are in a household where some people may have naturalized residency, legal residency, visas, and some may be undocumented. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but I suggest that folks speak to an immigration lawyer and understand and have knowledge of your rights. Now, apparently, y'all, let me pull this up, because I saw this today and I almost died, which was this issue back in the 1950s, where they rounded up. Yep, here it is. Let me tell you something, folks. Google, wonderful thing. So back in 1954 to 1955, I'm going to say one of the most egregious terms, but there was a system called Operation Wetback. And it was to round up and deport Mexican nationals. Now, it didn't matter if people had been in the country legally, if you looked Mexican, right? Or looked like, you weren't white, you were rounded up in this year and deported. Like kids went to school, said goodbye to their parents, came home, and their parents were gone, disappeared. This is what Tom Homan, right? The immigration czar, is talking about doing. And he's not talking about it, he's about that shit, and has said that blue state governors need to get the hell out of the way. Otherwise, they are going to double the amount of agents that they send to blue states to round up perceived immigrants, undocumented folks, and begin the deportations. And the fact is that this shit already happened. So when people again say can't possibly happen, Danielle, you're being hyperbolic. Can't possibly happen. It would never happen in America. Y'all, people in the chat talking about, I was born in 1954. So you know good goddamn well it wasn't that long ago. And they did it. Operation Wetback. This is what they're coming for. And then I started to think about it. And I said, so hold up. This man is threatening to send border agents, right? ICE, along with the military into blue states. Why do you think that is, folks? It is because they want a war. Because if they send these agents here and there is some type of uprising, then Donald Trump will have the full weight of the military to say, we're going to occupy New York City. We're going to occupy Los Angeles. And we're shutting this shit down. Again, think that it can't happen? These things have already happened here. They've already happened around the world, but they particularly have already happened here. They just have not taught us about it. So we're getting hip to this shit, but guess who already knows? The folks at the Heritage Foundation and those that have authored Project 2025. They are just going to operationalize, folks, laws that have been on the books. But we thought that we had evolved into our better selves. So these are just currently dead laws that they're about reviving in 68 days. So again, if you're living in a mixed status household, I believe, folks, I know a lot of us don't know people's phone numbers offhand because we just, we have them in our phone and we hit the number and then it goes. Have a list of phone numbers, right, on your person so that if you are taken, you have somebody to call, and at the top of that list should be a lawyer on top of your family. These are things that I want folks to be thinking about to be prepared. Next, if children you love attend public school, which are definitely millions of them, I suggest you begin sourcing other options, as this will most likely be their last school year. Also, pretty sure that that's going to be certain. Now, while there's a little bit of good news on the public education front in Louisiana, if you remember, the governor passed legislation because he wanted to put the 10 commandments on the wall in every classroom in Louisiana. Well, a federal judge just knocked that down and said it was unconstitutional. But guess what? It could be appealed where? Up to the Supreme Court, where Clarence Thomas and Alito and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett and Gorsuch sit to say, no, that's totally fine. You can do it. And provide the rubber stamp. Number 6, if you're headed to college, you may want to look abroad for options, as this administration, as I just said, is going to be cutting funding. And by cut funding, I mean completely decimate colleges and universities that don't comply with their standards, essentially turning the country's education into Florida. Number 7, if you work in a nonprofit, they are getting ready to pass a measure that has already been written in the House that would allow the president to defund. Defunding would come after such groups are labeled as terrorist organizations. Folks, this is unfolding. It isn't going to take years. It will take months. We can't prepare for what we don't know, but history is our guide here. That's what I want folks to understand. There are blue state governors right now that are linking arms, that are trying to figure out ways that they can resist. And my assumption is maybe they're able to resist for 6 months. Maybe they're able to resist for a year. But at some point, right, natural disaster will hit. Where is the FEMA funding coming from? Where is the rebuild money coming from? At some point, something will happen where you actually need the federal government. And much in the way that Donald Trump didn't provide aid to North Carolina through paper towels at Puerto Rico, they have a way of making people comply by hitting those pressure points. So this is what I say, that I am going to be using this show for the times that I am able to be able to offer what I think. And again, I'm not all knowing, but these are just things that are popping into my mind after years of working in policy and politics to be able to offer to people to at least think about, so that it's not a shock to you when things get super fucking bad, as they will. And here's something else, that before we head into Town Hall Tuesday, it is a town hall, so please do put your questions in the chat, and I will try to get to those questions, start to think about them. I will do 15 minutes always on Tuesdays for Town Hall, where you all get to ask questions. And if you're watching this later, you can put those questions in the comment section, and I will do my best to run through and answer them. But this is something important to keep in mind.
I don't want to hear any more parents out there nervous about what their children are being taught, frightened by drag queens reading books to your kids. If what you saw him do did not disgust you enough to protect your kids, I don't want to hear from you anymore.
That's the reality, folks, is that, there's going to be a lot of find out because people wanted to fuck around. And the find out portion is going to be those people who thought that Donald Trump was only going to go after the people that you didn't like in common. thought that Donald Trump was going to make the economy great again when we have the economy that is the envy of the world post-COVID. You're going to find out, much in the same way that Mexico never paid for anybody's wall, China ain't paying for anybody's tariffs. You are. So while folks wanted to complain about eggs and gas, well, have you ever traveled abroad into other countries that need to import everything? You ever like roll up into their supermarkets, let's say a Caribbean island or in Europe where gas is like $10 a gallon, and you go in and you're like, why are eggs $15 or meat is so high? Tariffs, right? That the people have to pay in order to import certain goods. And particularly in places where they don't grow a lot of things, right? We import basically every fucking thing in these United States because, again, we outsourced our factory jobs, all of these things to developing nations for cheaper labor. And then on top of that, oh, you have RFK Jr. that's going to be taking over like food and health, and he doesn't believe in fluoride in water that stops waterborne diseases or, pasteurized milk that he thinks causes autism. So again, the ways in which we begin to keep ourselves safe are going to become incredibly difficult over time, unless, of course, you have a cow, right? And a chicken coop. But what we need to do is be extraordinarily mindful of how we are moving and also, dear friends, how we are speaking and who we are speaking to. This is why building community is also going to be incredibly important, because as time goes on, you see what happens in authoritarians and dictators and dictatorships is that neighbors turn on neighbors as a way and point of survival. So who you can trust will begin to dwindle if you don't fortify these things now. So a little food for thought today, but let us head into our town hall. All right, friends, put your questions in the chat and I will do my best to get to them over the next 15 minutes. So, first question from Lori. Do you have any thoughts on what is needed for gay marriages? Very good question. So here is what I have been telling folks, particularly those that have kids. We know that as part of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, what Justice Clarence Thomas signaled and Alito signaled was that they did not like how Obergefell, the case that brought us same-sex marriage in 2015, they didn't like the way it was decided and would like to revisit that said case. I don't know if a revisiting looks like overturning marriage equality or those that are already married will be grandfathered in. I doubt it. But what I will say to folks that may in fact have children is you need to understand the laws of your state, whether or not you need to begin an adoption process for your children if you did not birth them, right? So that you can still be seen as their legal guardian. I, again, would contact a family attorney that is specifically focused in LGBTQ issues so that you can understand your rights. There is also an organization called Family Equality, familyequality.org, and they provide information on queer families and how to protect yourself. So again, that's familyequality.org. HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, is always a good resource. ACLU, another very good resource in order to be able to understand your rights moving forward. Very good question. I'm looking in the chat for questions. And I will tell you, oh, good question. What will happen to HBCUs? My daughter goes to Howard. Like I said at the top, I believe that HBCUs are in danger. HBCUs receive a lot of federal funding because they don't receive as much endowment, right, as other PWIs, predominantly white institutions do with their alumni class. So they rely a lot on federal money. I believe that the part of this accreditation and trying to bankrupt these schools is to even get rid of the opportunity for Black students, if they're not going to be accepted, for instance, at these other institutions, to actually even have an opportunity. This is all, dear friends, about taking away pathways to opportunity for communities of color, particularly Black people. So very important to pay attention to that. Oh, good question. What social text email platforms are safe? I mean, I utilize WhatsApp, and I will tell you that WhatsApp is owned by Meta. And who was one of the first people to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory? Mark Zuckerberg. And I look forward to working with you. So if, again, Donald Trump is saying, I want the information, give me the data, right, on X, Y, and Z, I doubt that any of these institutions are going to be pushing back on these folks. You can look at Signal as another alternative. But again, I'm concerned with who these places are owned by. Oh, what will become of trans care, in your opinion? I believe that transgender care in this country is going to come to an end. Right now, it is primarily focused on trans youth that are seeking hormone blockers at an age before they hit puberty, which is when doctors say that you should start hormone blocking therapies. And what did Donald Trump say in yet another video? They will not be allowing that. They will not be funding that. The federal government will take away all funding for that. And I believe that they're going to try and institute what they have done with abortion, which is criminalize those doctors that are indeed providing treatment to youth, and criminalize the parents, which is what Ron DeSantis was doing down in Florida and they were doing in Texas. So it's all parents' rights, until, of course, you decide to actually listen to your child. Then all of a sudden you're labeled a child abuser. So these are the ways in which they're going to be operating. And I think that finding care as a trans person in these United States is going to be damn near impossible. Do you think state government employees will be fired too? I don't know. I think it depends on what state you're in. I think that if you're in, again, a blue state, probably not. But if you're in a red state and you're taking your cues from Donald Trump, you're going to want to get rid of the quote unquote deep state, which means those career employees. So I think that it is likely. Question: can you educate us on the dangers of oh Lord. Alex, I may have to dedicate a whole show to that. Stephen Miller is going to be the second most powerful, like the third most powerful person in that White House. The dangers of Stephen Miller: he is an unabashed white nationalist who hates immigrants. of all stripes, not just what they deem to be illegal. He hates all of them. And I think that his plan is to deport millions of people, legal or not, provide absolutely no visas, no immigration status for people that are from non-white countries. That's his big thing, and also cruelty. They also hate, like I said, the trans community, the LGBTQ community, the Black community. So Stephen Miller is basically like a Scooby-Doo villain, but worse, not funny, and definitely not at all cute. Will Canada close its borders? Well, funny enough, Justin Trudeau has put a moratorium on immigration to Canada. And I believe that it was ahead of this election because there was going to be an influx of people wanting to move to Canada that they can't afford. So I don't think that they're going to close their borders per se, but I definitely know that there is a moratorium right now on immigration there. Will you be more active on Blue Sky? I have a Blue Sky account, but had not been using Blue Sky. But yes, I'm going to begin to activate myself over there. And when I do make the transition permanently and close down Twitter, I will absolutely let folks know that that is a place that you're going to be able to find me. Question. Hello. Question, Danielle, do you think Harris and Dem leadership will request recounts? Because the math ain't mathin'. Girl, here's the thing. Recounts cost money. And I think outside of like Pennsylvania, which has an automatic recount when when a certain threshold is hit, recounts cost money. And I don't know if you've been seeing in your emails or text messages of the Harris Walz campaign asking for funds because they want to be able to transition that into recounts, particularly to take a look at Senate seats and House seats. But no, so far there has been no credible evidence of there being any type of misgivings with this election in terms of fraud. I say that. And then I say this because we don't know. And I certainly don't know. But do you guys remember Lance Armstrong, right? Tour de France, the best, cyclist in the world. And they kept testing him, kept testing his blood even after he retired from the sport. And then they eventually found that he had been doping, but like the technology that was available at the time, it could not suss out that he had been manipulating his body in different ways that weren't illegal at that time, right? But the technology caught up to what he was doing. And then they were like, you've been cheating. And then took away the man's medals. That's kind of how I feel about this election in a lot of ways. I also believe that I was wrong about the amount of Americans that hate other Americans. Again, I thought it was 30%, but it is obviously more than half. And so, but two things can be true at the same time. There can absolutely be over 50% of the population that hates the rest of us on top of the math not mathing. So there's that. But do I think that we will ever find out? Probs not. But is Donald Trump one to be on the up and up? No, we know that that is not the case. But again, in terms of what we currently have access to, there has been no improprieties. So those are my thoughts. Any more questions from folks. Yeah, 62%. Elon, Starlink, I can't find my vote being counted in Michigan. Diane, you are not alone. Other people have said the very same thing. Question: in this religious crusade being sold, what about a scenario where Trump mobilizes his crazy Qs and other nationalist groups? Could there be enough infighting? Oh, where there is conflict. I think that is what Donald Trump actually, his leadership style is, to create chaos and to have like a dog, excuse me, a dog eat dog mentality where people don't trust other people and you're always jockeying for position. Like that's how mobsters work, and that is how this that's how his past administration worked. If you listen to anybody that had written, a number of books about working in the Trump White House, that's exactly what they said. They said that it was like, everyone for themselves type of mentality. And he liked pinning people against other people so that there was never going to be any type of real camaraderie that was built. That is a power move. So do we think that there'll be enough infighting? No, because I think that they are all situated in the way that they want to be, which is, aligned with Donald Trump, which means that you're aligned with power and you're aligned with the purse. And we also know what has happened to people that have stepped out of line. So there's that. All right, we are winding down here. Question: will the Christian nationalists be successful? I mean, my question, Omar, would be, haven't they already been successful? Right? We're here in this moment because of white Christian nationalism. We're here in this moment because of white evangelical Christians that decided to throw out whatever morals that they had and move forward with a candidate that on paper would seemingly go against their values and their religious texts. But they did so because for them, the ends were going to justify the means. So I would say, yeah, they pretty much won here. All right. Last question. Danielle, why can't Biden stack SCOTUS like this minute? Because he doesn't have the will. All of there have been a lot of people that have said, Joe Biden should do this on his way out because he has presidential immunity. Joe Biden should do that on his way out because he has presidential immunity. Joe Biden is an institutionalist. He is never going to take advantage, even if it was for the greater good, to take any action that could be seen as unseemly. Many people are telling him that he should go ahead and fucking pardon his son. And I don't think that he's going to do that because of how it could look. I mean, we are living in such an alternate reality right now. Like we have been pulled into the orbit of Earth too. So if I'm Joe Biden, I'm saying, well, I got 68 days. So what can we do to try and safeguard the American people and everyone that we care about right now that can't be undone, or at least it would take a little bit of time to undo. But no, they were all going to show up there on Inauguration Day. They were all going to shake hands with people that said that they should go to hell and should die and all of these things because of protocol. And then they'll march off into the wind and hope for the best and say, like Joe Biden said recently, oh, we'll be okay. The fuck we will. We need to figure out, like I said at the top, how to safeguard ourselves and our families moving forward, because safety and time is of the utmost importance. The time for hand-wringing, finger-pointing, and panicking has passed. Now it's time to be as actionable as possible. All right, my friends, thank you so much for those questions in this fantastic town hall. Wow, we've been here an hour today because there's a lot happening and there's a lot going on. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you all. I appreciate your donations so very much. I cannot express to you that without them, I can't actually do this work. This is not work that I get paid to do, but it's work that I find important. And like I said, until it becomes illegal or unsafe for me to do it, I will continue being a voice for those that I feel need one. So thank you to those that sent wonderful donations. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Independent media needs this kind of support. And if y'all turning off CNN and MSNBC, please consider myself and Mary Trump Media an alternative, and consider putting your dollars there. Even if it is $1, it goes a very long way. So thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And as always, dear friends, like, comment, and subscribe. The algorithm loves this. It allows these videos to get seen by more and more people. So please like and subscribe, share the videos, comment, do that, and help this channel grow. As always, dear friends, power to the people, and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, my dear, dear friends, please stay safe. I will see you back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Be well.